I don't think my name really matters because at school nobody ever asks for it anymore. I'm 12 years old, and the hardest thing I've learned so far isn't math or science or history. It's the feeling of being targeted, not for something you did wrong, but simply for being who you are. When I first started at my school, everything felt normal. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't invisible either, and most days I just blended in without thinking too much about it. Back then, I thought that was enough. I've always felt more comfortable talking to girls. Conversations felt easier, calmer, and more honest. I didn't have to compete, shout, or pretend to be tougher than I was. We talked about school, about random things, about how our days felt, and for me that was normal. I didn't think it meant anything, but at some point, other boys started to notice, and from that moment on, the atmosphere around me slowly changed. At first it was just looks, then whispers, then laughter that stopped the moment I turned around. I would hear comments like, "He's always with girls," or "He's not like us." I didn't fully understand what they meant, but I could feel that whatever they were saying wasn't kind. It felt like they were examining me, measuring me against something I didn't even know the rules of. I started wondering if I was doing something wrong. Maybe I should talk less. Maybe I should act tougher. Maybe I should stop being myself. These thoughts stayed in my head even though nothing about me had changed. One day, during recess, a boy bumped into my shoulder on purpose and laughed with his friends as he walked away. He didn't apologize, and no one said anything. That was the first moment I realized this wasn't accidental anymore. When I went home that day, my mom asked if something was wrong. I said no. I thought that if I talked about it, it would somehow become more real, more permanent. I believed that staying quiet might make it go away, but it didn't. Over time, the comments became louder and more direct. They would stop me in the hallway and ask, "Are you even a real boy?" Or say things like, "Why do you talk like that? And why don't you act like us?" When they said us, they meant something I didn't want to become. Being aggressive, mocking others, and turning kindness into weakness. One day, in front of several people, someone said, "He's definitely gay." The word echoed in my head long after it was spoken. I knew what it meant, but I didn't understand why it was being used like a weapon. My heart started racing, my ears felt hot, and it felt like everyone was looking at me. No one defended me, no one said anything. The teacher didn't hear it, or maybe didn't want to. That silence hurt almost as much as the words. After that, school stopped feeling like a place where I could focus. I sat in class staring at my notebook without really seeing what was written on the page. My thoughts were always somewhere else, replaying moments from the hallway or wondering what would happen next. Every morning before school, my stomach hurt. My mom wanted to take me to the doctor, but I didn't want to go because I knew the pain wasn't physical. It was something deeper, something that didn't show up on tests. At home, I changed too. I didn't want to sit with my family as much. I stopped watching games with my dad, even though I used to enjoy those moments. When he asked how school was going, my throat tightened and I couldn't answer. I would go to my room, close the door, and cry quietly so no one could hear me. I felt ashamed for feeling this way, even though I didn't know what I had done to deserve it. I started avoiding mirrors. I tried to lower my voice when I spoke. I controlled how I laughed. When I walked next to my female friends, I created distance, afraid that being seen with them would make things worse. The worst part was realizing that the bullying was slowly changing how I saw myself. I felt like I was shrinking, like pieces of me were disappearing just to make other people more comfortable. One day, one of my friends asked why those boys treated me that way. I said I didn't know, but I did. I just couldn't say it out loud yet. Saying it would mean admitting that their words had power over me. It would mean admitting that I was hurt. Eventually, my mom noticed something was seriously wrong. She came into my room one evening, sat next to me, and asked why my hands were shaking. That was the moment I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her everything, the comments, the laughter, the silence, and how small I felt every day at school. She cried, and seeing her cry because of me hurt in a way I didn't expect. My dad listened quietly, then said something that stayed with me. "You are not wrong." Even after hearing that, things didn't magically get better. Some days are still hard. Some mornings I still don't want to go to school. But I've learned something important. The problem was never that I was friends with girls. The problem was that some people think they have the right to decide who others should be. I'm still quiet, still thoughtful, still myself, and maybe that's not something I should be ashamed of.
What this student describes is a clear example of how bullying, especially when mixed with homophobic attitudes, can deeply affect a child's emotional development, sense of identity, and daily functioning. At the age of 12, children are still forming their understanding of who they are, where they belong, and how they fit into social groups. When that process is disrupted by repeated mockery, labeling, and exclusion, the impact can be profound. In this case, the bullying did not start with physical violence, but with subtle social signals, looks, whispers, and laughter. These early behaviors are often dismissed as harmless, yet they are powerful tools of social control. Over time, they escalated into direct verbal attacks that questioned the student's gender expression and implied that being different was something shameful. This type of experience often leads to chronic stress, anxiety, and difficulty concentrating, which explains the student's academic struggles and physical symptoms like stomach pain. The silence of bystanders and authority figures plays a critical role here. When a child experiences bullying and no one intervenes, the message they receive is that their pain is invisible or unimportant. This can result in internalized shame and self-blame, where the child begins to believe that changing themselves is the only way to survive. We see this clearly when the student describes altering his voice, behavior, and friendships to avoid attention. From a psychological perspective, this situation affects self-esteem and identity formation. The student is forced to question not only how others see him, but how he sees himself. Without support, this can lead to long-term emotional consequences, including withdrawal, depression, and difficulty trusting others. What makes a difference, even in painful situations like this, is validation. When the student finally shares his experience and hears the words, "You are not wrong," it provides a moment of emotional grounding. It does not erase the trauma, but it helps restore a sense of self-worth. Supportive family responses, combined with appropriate intervention at school, are essential in helping children recover from these experiences. This story reminds us that bullying is not just about words or actions. It is about power, silence, and the fear of being different. Creating safe environments where children are allowed to exist as they are, without fear of ridicule, is not optional. It is necessary for healthy emotional development.